Let's get back to domestic issues now. And there's an unusual alliance has sprung up in South Australia to try and fight back for jobs and the economy against coronavirus lockdown measures. I'm joined by two Ians. It's not a new TV show. The two Ians. We met Ian Markos last week, who heads up the Master Builders Association in South Australia, and Ian Horne heads up the Australian Hotels Association. Ian Horne from the Hotels Association. Let's start with the publicans. You've just got too many restrictions on your industry now. You reckon that it's time to open them up?
Well, we've just come out of a three-day imposed lockdown, a lockdown that was going to be 6 days. When we've come out of that, and whether that was a false alert or an own goal, that's for others to work out. But we've been left with quite severe restrictions. Friday a week ago, Friday the 13th, we were planning on looking within a week of having stand-up drinking. We had one person in 2 square metres. We had no caps on venues. As of today, every hospitality venue in the state has seen their capacity lowered to one person per 4 square metres. So we've gone from 50% to 25%. Then they've added in a 100 maximum cap. So to give you an example, the Adelaide Casino has a capacity of over 7,000 people. They're only allowed 100. Large suburban hotels, which may have 800 or 900 capacity, they're allowed 100. So their capacities, in fact, aren't 25%. They're 10% and 11%. No hospitality venue in South Australia is viable at that level.
It is just ridiculous. And this is all based on a lockdown that they now know they would not have imposed if they had the right information. It's a shambles, Ian Markos. You talked to us about this last week. Your industry has been hit bad in construction. Why have you teamed up with the publicans, the builders and the publicans getting together to put pressure on the state government?
Well, everyone likes a beer, Chris. But I know a lot of Ian's members and I know how hard they're doing it. And, having a chat to them, and I thought yesterday, I'll contact Ian and maybe we should compare notes and do a joint media release. And in that way it might be a little bit more impactful. I mean, no one should be surprised that people that run an association are there to represent their members. That's what we're there for. That's what we do very well, and we do it passionately in order to help them. So that's what it's about.
Well, do you think that business has been too compliant, that they haven't spoken out enough? Well, look, we all know no one wants to be the coronavirus denier. No one wants to be responsible for an outbreak. But honestly, to have a whole state shut down for no reason is a complete maladministration, isn't it?
Well, look, it's been a fiasco, the whole thing, let's be honest. And what was really disappointing is, particularly when Stephen Marshall came out and said, well, if we knew about this pizza guy liar, we wouldn't have locked down the whole state. Well, if that was the case, why didn't he lift the restrictions immediately? Now, my members then could have, started working on all the things they need to do to open up a building site. They could have contacted the suppliers, the manufacturers, the tradies, contractors, get the equipment back on site, and they would have been able to start, on the Saturday and the Sunday. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and we had to suffer for another 24 hours, but at least they let us out of the house to go and exercise.
Ian Horne, this is just bad government, isn't it, when you're jumping at shadows like this, because you want people to plan, you want people to make bookings, you've got people who've got to order supplies for their businesses. As borders start to open up, there must be great fears that there's going to be a lot of uncertainty right around the country, that people can't book plans, they can't book holidays.
Well, certainly what we endured last week was unexpected. The first we learnt about the 6-day lockdown was at the media conference on Wednesday.
Wow.
We as an industry, and in fact all business, was given 10 hours to shut down their industry. And of course, what was going to be 6 days lockdown, then a further 8 days of heavy restrictions, is now ended up being 3 days lockdown and 11 days of heavy restrictions. We can't see any justification for not returning us to what the conditions were, the ones I mentioned earlier, prior to all of this. The rates of infection are near zero or all traceable. And in fact, even Grant Stevens, the police commissioner, made comments yesterday on radio that in fact every case in South Australia is traced back to its source and identified. And the cost to our industry was clarified by Darryl Gobbett, who works with the South Australian Centre for Economic Studies, when yesterday he suggested that the cost for that 3 days and the associated loss in wages, etc., could approach $500 million.
Unbelievable. Thanks so much to you, Ian, and Ian Markos. I appreciate your time. It just makes so much sense, doesn't it? You can't do this to businesses on the back of nothing and then just leave it in place. Those restrictions, they should immediately go back to where they were before the South Australian government started jumping at shadows.